can someone say they did something if it never happened?
People confess to this crime.
That's what the whole case hinges on.
With the upcoming release of HBO's new documentary, Mind Over Murder, there's about to be a lot of buzz around the Beatrice Six. You would never imagine that it could be possible to wrongly convict 6 people for one crime, but in 1985, that's exactly what happened to the Beatrice Six. The Beatrice Six is the group of 6 people who were falsely accused and sentenced for the death of Helen Wilson in Beatrice, Nebraska, despite their innocence and lack of evidence. The group served prison sentences until they were finally exonerated in 2009 due to DNA testing that they never previously had. How does a group of 6 people get falsely accused of and serve years of their lives away for a crime they didn't have anything to do with? Let's find out. Today we are discussing the Beatrice Six, tomorrow you decide. Give this video a like and let us know who you want to see us cover next time on Where Are They Now? Beatrice is a small farming town in Nebraska. Helen Wilson lived in Beatrice with her husband until he passed from a heart attack, leaving her to live alone in a small apartment of a 3-story building. In January of 1985, Helen took a trip to visit family in western Nebraska. It was during her visit that Helen began to develop a cough and she refused to be treated by a doctor. She returned to her apartment in Beatrice on February 3rd, and by the 5th, her condition had gotten worse. Her son and daughter-in-law visited her that evening and brought her food and medicine for her condition. They left her place around 9:45 p.m. and called up to follow around midnight with no answer. During the early hours of February 6th, a man named Bruce Allen Smith, who was 22 years old at the time, entered Helen's apartment building. He tampered with the building's fuses and wires before he made his way to Helen's unit and very violently attacked her. The next morning, Helen was found by her sister. She called the police around 9:30 a.m. and they ruled out robbery due to no valuables or cash being missing. They did find a kitchen knife and half of a $5 bill on the ground. They took samples of hair and bodily fluids found at the scene, and the blood was later identified as the rare type B non-secretor. Now, at this time in the mid-80s, they did not have DNA testing available to them, which is why they relied so heavily on testimonies from witnesses and suspects. The police investigated several suspects, one even being Bruce Allen Smith. A witness told authorities that they had seen Smith at a bar the same evening he broke into Helen's building. The witness said he was drinking at the bar before leaving to go to a party. While at the party, he threatened to attack and hurt a woman in the same way that he ended up hurting Helen, and he was promptly kicked out. When he was dropped off from the party by a friend of his, he was left a few blocks away from Helen's apartment. He was last seen staggering toward her building around 3:45 a.m. The police even found a woman's purse outside of the building, which is thought to be a purse that Bruce stole from one of the women at the party. Bruce already had a pretty extensive criminal history at just 22, and get this, his grandmother used to live at the same building as Helen. So at this point, the police are thinking they have a pretty good suspect, and they did because he was the one who actually committed the crime. So how did they not take Bruce right away and lock him up? The police excused Bruce Allen Smith as a suspect in the case, all due to an error that the lab made when testing the blood. Since they didn't think that his blood was a match to the rare blood at the crime scene, they let him go. After that, the case of Helen Wilson went cold. That is until an ex-member of the police force, Bert Searcy, volunteered to work on the case as a private investigator in 1989. The police would not work with Bert, meaning he would not have access to any reports, records, crime scene photos, etc. But this wouldn't stop him. Bert decided to interview a 17-year-old woman named Lisa after one of her friends directed him to her, stating she had been informed about the murder. Lisa told Bert that she remembers seeing a man named Tom Winslow, along with Joseph White and Joanne Taylor, pull into an alley near Helen's building the night of February 5th. Lisa also added that Joanne came to her the morning after at 7:30 a.m. when police cars were at Helen's residence and confessed that she and White had been the ones to take Helen's life. From this information, Bert thought of Lisa as a great witness and pushed the county sheriff office to allow him to work on Helen Wilson's case. They eventually granted him access to the case, so now Bert was a police officer again and began to bring the new suspects in to be questioned. He first interviewed Winslow, who was actually already in jail serving unrelated time. Winslow initially said that he had been at work at the time of the crime, but now, being in jail and wanting out desperately, he said that he was with Joseph and Joanne on the night of the murder. There are recordings of all the interrogations with the Beatrice Six, and during Tom's, he initially has trouble recalling information that was consistent with the crime. At one time, the recording was shut off for 44 minutes and then resumed. resumed. After the 44-minute-long break, it seemed that Tom had all of a sudden remembered seeing Joanne and Joseph walk up the stairs to Helen's apartment. The police then arrested Joseph White, who had been in Alabama at the time, and Joanne Taylor, who was in North Carolina. Burt then interviewed Joanne, who recalled being with Joseph the night of the murder. She stated that he had gone to Helen's light-colored house to do some yard work, and then Joanne saw Joseph and another man attack Helen. Oh, so Joanne saw them do it. That must really have moved the case forward, right? Not exactly. There were a few things with Joanne's story that just didn't add up. For starters, I'm not sure why he would be going out to do yard work, or what yard work would need to be done in February in Nebraska in the middle of the night, which is when all this originally went down in '85. And Helen lived in a 3-story red brick building, not a light-colored house. During his interview with Joanne Taylor, he turned off the recording for 19 minutes this time, and when her interview continued, Taylor, just like Tom, had a sudden memory reboot and could now remember the 3-story building and recalled that Tom had a habit of ripping bills in half. This being a significant piece of info because if you remember from earlier, they had found half of a $5 bill on the ground at the original crime scene. She then met with a mental health professional, Wayne Price. Price was also a sheriff and had actually worked with Joanne previously on her mental health, and now Wayne was going to be interviewing her as a police officer. Not exactly ethically correct, but he didn't seem to care all too much. While he was with Joanne, he apparently helped her to recover some repressed memories. After this, she magically remembered that the other man who had helped Joseph White attack Helen was none other than Tom Winslow. How fitting. So far, we have 3 people arrested for the 1985 crime that Bruce Allen Smith did in fact commit alone: Tom Winslow, Joseph White, and Joanne Taylor. Another interesting factor about the 3 individuals is that none of them had type B blood, and if you recall, this was the reason Bruce was originally let go in 1985. So with no one matching the blood type, instead of letting these 3 go, they set out to find more suspects. Not long after, they found Deborah Sheldon, who suffered from mental health issues and a low level of intelligence. She got herself involved in the case as well as a man named James Dean. Dean denied any involvement with the case. That was until Wayne helped him to uncover, and you'll never believe this, a repressed memory. James was also given a lie detector test which police claim he failed, even though there really is no way to concrete pass or fail a test like that. James began to question if he was in fact involved, given his repressed memories and the results of the polygraph test. I'm sure it was an extremely confusing time. James was offered a plea deal and pleaded to aiding and abetting in the crime. So at this time in the case, we now have 5 people who have been arrested for a crime, and none of them had anything to do with it. And still none of them have type B blood. Authorities helped fix this issue by helping James and Deborah to remember yet another suspect, Kathy Gonzalez. Kathy had lived in the apartment above Helen. The lovely Wayne Price, our #1 guy, also worked with Kathy to help her remember like he did with the others before, and was also told that she failed a polygraph test. She, like the others, were pressured by these men in power into confessing to a crime that they were nowhere near. In a video with the Innocence Project, Joanne says that she remembers all she could think about at the time of her interrogation was her 14-month-old son and her husband she had newly married. They told her she would be the first woman on death row if she didn't confess because of the proof they had on her. She was confused and scared for her life, a feeling I'm sure the other 5 could relate to. Kathy Gonzalez did have type B blood, but it was secretor as opposed to non-secretor. This difference means that none of the men or women who they had taken into custody matched the blood at the crime scene at all. I think the police were just glad they had someone with type B blood. Kathy, Joanne, and Deborah all eventually were pushed into pleading guilty to aiding and abetting with the death of Helen Wilson. Joseph White and Tom Winslow did not. Joseph's trial began in October 1989. The jury was shocked to learn that Joseph had once appeared in an adult film, and when he was given a photo of Helen, he had no idea who she was. He referred to the photo as an old woman. He had never seen Helen before and had no idea who she was. The jury was also shocked that he would refer to this woman as an old woman. This led to the not very helpful jury looking past the prosecutor's inconsistencies. He was not a very strong or confident man, so it didn't take long for Joseph to be sentenced to life in prison for this crime. After the disaster that was Joseph's trial, Winslow decided to take a plea deal and was sentenced to 50 years in prison. Now, we have 6 innocent people, Kathy, Deborah, Joanne, Tom, and Joseph, all serving time, while the actual criminal is running free. So what happened next? Where are they now? Bruce Allen Smith died in September of 1992 and never faced any charges or served any time for his crimes. As for the Beatrice Six, years later, due to a motion by Joseph's attorney, over 40 items from the original crime scene were sent to be tested for DNA, testing that was not available previously, and none of the DNA they found matched anyone who had been convicted. Shocker. By 2008, some of the group had already been released from prison, but finally the entire Beatrice Six was set free. Joseph's charges were dismissed and the rest of the 5 received pardons. This case is so remarkable due to the fact that some of the members truly believed that they actually had committed the crime they were accused of, calling and telling their families of the great remorse and regret they were feeling. These 6 vulnerable people who were scared, confused, and dealing with mental health issues lost family members and precious decades of their lives during their time in prison. The idea of repressed memories led to a lot of wrong convictions during the time of their arrest. In 2009, the group filed a lawsuit against Gage County and won for $28.1 million. They had collectively served over 70 years in prison. Unfortunately, Joseph White, the man who got this DNA testing process started in the first place, passed away in 2011 due to a work incident. The winnings of $28.1 million is a significant prize for the group, seeing as it is over 3 times the annual budget for Gage County, forcing them to raise property tax as high as they can under state law. I'm sure the farmers and residents are going to be loving this. Good luck, Gage County. What a roller coaster this story is. I don't know about you, but I'm excited to watch the HBO documentary Mind Over Murder, diving deeper into this unsettling story, airing on June 20th, 2022. What do you think? Should they receive more for their time served? Should Wayne Price be held accountable for anything? Why was everyone so oblivious during this whole case? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for tuning in. I have been your host, Maddie, and I will see you next time on Where Are They Now?